Good morning and welcome to Sunday service at North Chapel, the North Universalist Chapel Society of Woodstock, Vermont. It's Sunday, December 6th, 2020, and I am Jenny Galpin. Today, our minister, the Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley, will be giving the reflection. If we were gathered physically together in our beautiful sanctuary this December morning, we might be anticipating watching moving spirit dancers adding poetry and motion all around us during the service. Later this month, we will see them on a recorded service. Or we might be settling in to be cast under the spell of Eugene Friesian's cello music, resonating through our sanctuary and our bodies. He too will join us remotely this year. We would be looking through the order of service to find out what's going on with the church. Any special programs? That information is now online on the church website. At coffee hour in the social hall, I would be taking hearts from the Change the World Kid basket, and I would select gifts to buy for children in the community whose families have limited resources. Information on how you can participate is on the website, which is linked at the end of the service. We would be making wreaths together. We would be enjoying Wassail Weekend here in Woodstock. And on Christmas Eve, we would be listening and singing together in our beautifully decorated chapel, from the sounding of the shofar through the mosaic of devotional words spoken by diverse voices to our exit singing Silent Night. Watch for details on this year's remote service. This December is different. In our families, our church, in our country, in the world. We find now how our own actions and the behavior of other humans can make a difference, shifting our own destiny and the lives around us. Perhaps we can expand our senses and thinking to include more people, places, nature. I've chosen to increase my pledge to North Chapel this year, support the good work of the church. North Chapel has been a safe harbor for me in the storm of disturbing events happening all around me. I've also created my own list of people to give gifts of support that they have not asked for. Some healthcare heroes, some teachers in their own steep learning curve, postal clerks, people who have to stand close to one stranger after another. How can I thank them in a way that might lift their spirits? This season in the northern hemisphere of our precious planet continues its natural quieting, resting, turning inward, exploring our reserves. We're all feeling the cooling season, the fading light, the growing darkness. North Chapel's December worship theme is Focus on the Light. During World War II, Hans Deutsch created the chalice and flame as the Unitarian symbol, having connotations of sacrifice and love. Today, Unitarian Universalists include the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. With sacrifice, love, reason, community, hope, and keeping our eyes on the light, we can weather COVID and many other challenges we currently face. Survival, and more than survival. Can the sharp edge of the adversities we face this year be somehow turned into opportunity to shift what's been our comfort zone, to explore possibilities we may not have considered, to make fresh alliances, and seek new ways forward? Please join me in singing today's opening hymn, Gather the Spirit.
Hello, my name is Laura Foley, and I'm speaking to you today from the woods of Pomfret, Vermont. Tomorrow is December 7th, the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and around this time of year I always find myself ruminating on my father's experience. He was a doctor in China, and he was captured on this day and put in prison camp and spent 4 years in prison in China and Japan. And I have read his accounts of some of his journal entries, and some of that has entered into poetry I've written about him. This is called Tin Sin, December 1941. The night before his imprisonment, after a truly Russian feast, toasting each course with vodka, he danced and sang all night. In the rickshaw at 4 a.m., he wore his Manchurian fur coat, pulled up around his neck against 40 below, each star frigidly distinct in foreign constellations. The chill Gobi Desert wind blew Japanese sentries in too, surrounding his house at 6 a.m., where he slept like a child, beneath a warm Tibetan carpet, the man who would be my dad, who never slept so well again. I'm going to read 2 other short poems. Prayer, 1943. Dad and his fellow prisoners crouched under a shed, its roof a sieve of shrapnel holes, allowing rain they didn't notice, any more than hunger. In their concentration on pawns, queens, bishops, rooks they carved from discarded toothbrush handles, from their mouths to God's ears. Not humming. On the forced march from Tin Sin to Wusung, our Marines ordered silent. No humming or singing, snapped the Japanese, as the men trudged 100 miles to prison. My father not humming, the whole of 4 winters, or to my knowledge, since.
Good morning, North Chapel friends. My name is Ann Dean, and welcome to my fireside chat. So here's a little factoid that some of you may not know. In 2015, we as a church community decided to see if we could make our church carbon neutral by 2020. One of the ways we have made major inroads toward this goal is by insulating all the walls of the church each time we have done construction. But we're not quite there yet. the amount of pounds of food harvested from the permaculture garden since its inception, the amount we received from the Byrne Foundation in grant money this fall to support our continued project of making our church carbon neutral. 10,000 of that grant money was matched by donations from our North Chapel community. The number of people we know of who have replaced all or part of their lawn with a permaculture garden. The number of pounds of CO2 that will be kept out of the atmosphere each year since replacing 39 incandescent bulbs in the sanctuary with LED lights. The number of cardboard boxes we recycled and used to cover the manure and the hay when we installed our permaculture garden. The percent we really hope you will increase your pledge to for the church this coming year. Thank you so much for considering this.
Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. My name is Leon Dunkley. I minister here at North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel in Woodstock, Vermont. It is good to be together. Today is Sunday, December the 6th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Best of My Heart. It is a meditation on forgiveness. These days, the sun is so low in the sky. The light has such angle to it, and it gathers within us, and it gathers around us like a blanket. Gather that spirit. Gather it up. It is precious and it is rare. The spirit of heart, the spirit of mind. Make the good decision, the sound decision to hold it close. Dancers make the best decisions. They live inside the art that they create. They deliver a gift that is so precious, and they give it to the world. Do you think of yourself as a dancer or as an artist in any way? I don't think of myself as a dancer, but I admire those who do. Great dancers don't start out that way. We start out slowly and we grow by inches. It's important to be forgiving of ourselves and of one another as we grow when we're first starting out. So dancing is not my thing, but I find it to be so beautiful. Dancing requires courage. Dirty Dancing requires courage. Do you remember the film, Dirty Dancing, 1987? I'm dating myself. It starred Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. Jennifer plays a character named Frances. Frances's nickname was Baby. She and her family were on a vacation in the Catskills, and she meets Johnny Castle, Patrick Swayze, whose beautiful dancing she admires and whose beautiful body and beautiful being she admires. She likes him. And so with ulterior motive, she pursues. Frances Baby gets Johnny Castle to give her dancing lessons. And she starts off well enough, and she gets slowly better over time. She learns to invest her dancing, her art, with the joie de vivre, with the spirit of life, with élan vital, with passion, with soul energy, with life's gift. You know, it's one thing to dance as if a good grade depends upon it. It's quite another thing to dance as if the good life depends upon it. When Frances Baby figured this out, she leapt into the air and she flew. She flew right up and into the air. She flew right on up and into the open arms of Johnny Castle, who caught her and held her famously above his head. At the climax of the movie, I cry each time I see it. It's beautiful. If you haven't already, you should check it out. Joie de vivre, spirit of life, the rivers of life, élan vital, passion, energy. Good dancers know how to make the best of this. One of my greatest teachers was a dancer named Jamie. She's a wonderful, dancer, gifted. She's my favorite dancer right now. And there is an absolutely stunning picture of her in the newspapers, in the Miami Herald. I think they published it a couple of years ago. And just like Frances Baby in Dirty Dancing, Jamie totally flies on wings all her own. She had no Johnny Castle lifting her up, up, up and into the air. She did it all herself. She and God, I'd like to think, because she's so high off the ground. Head was turned towards the sky. She's looking up. She's looking backwards so much that she sees the world behind her, her arms outstretched like wings, her right knee thrusting up with power right in front of her, her left leg strong, extended, impossibly behind. Her light blue costume was flowing. She danced just like the sky. If human beings flew, we'd fly just like this. We'd fly like Jamie, leaping, skybound, with the force of life and with the joy of it. No gravity to bring us down. No gravity strong enough to bring us down. I want to tell you a funny story about something that happened to me in California. Something funny happened to me on the way to breakfast. I was going out to breakfast on a Saturday morning in Berkeley, and there's this great place on Sacramento Street called the Homemade Cafe. It's a quaint place with indoor-outdoor seating. It's got an exposed kitchen, good wait staff, good ambiance. I really love that place. I was going to breakfast with Betty. Betty is my second mom. She's my mother's best friend in life, and she's very dear to me. She has been all my life, church family. So we were walking towards the Homemade Cafe, and we were close enough to see that people had already been seated outside. There were several groups of breakfast seekers who were already eating. And as we approached, I recognized someone. I recognized a woman, but I could not remember from where. I only knew that I knew her and that we were connected somehow. And she recognized me as well, and she smiled. And her smile put me at ease. I could not remember her name, so I just said hi and returned the smile. I didn't know the person who was sitting next to her, so I said, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but my name is Leon, and this is my friend Betty. And she said, that's funny, I remember you because you used to be my mugger. And then she laughed, a gentle laugh, and she smiled a gentle smile at her friend who was eating with her across the table. And her friend across the table quickly lit up with a little bit of delight. It was a weird and strange little moment. I was a little embarrassed, of course, and Betty, my second mom, was totally confused. For a moment, we all just sat there looking at each other in a way that is hard to describe. So, here's the deal. When I lived in California during seminary, I worked for an organization called Bay Area Model Mugging. I was a mugger for a profession. I worked for an organization that is now called Impact Bay Area, which isn't nearly as cool as BAM, which is Bay Area Model Mugging, but that's okay. While I was in seminary, I worked as a model mugger. BAM, or Bay Area Model Mugging, is a business, it's a nonprofit whose central mission is the teaching of self-defense, particularly to women of all ages who are at risk of sexual assault. The woman who I recognized at the Homemade Cafe in Berkeley, the woman whose name I could not remember, she had been a student in one of the classes that I taught. It could have been a little bit awkward, but we were all very kind to one another. The self-defense classes that we taught were very intense, they were challenging. They required a lot of skill. In fact, becoming an instructor requires a year's worth of physical training and a lot of emotional maturity. We always trained, we always taught in pairs, in male and female teams. We taught the real life skills of self-defense. It was full impact, full contact. It was a class like no other. Our students pulled no punches. They did not hold back in any way. They learned to fight with all of their might, and our job was to teach them how to access the power that they had within themselves. Now, I get it. It does sound funny to say that I used to be a mugger. But I have to tell you, it was one of the most challenging, most crushing, and most deeply rewarding experiences that I've ever had. Our students were inspirational, always. There were no exceptions. It was physically taxing and it was dangerous, so we had to equip ourselves with foot pads and shin guards and knee pads and thigh shields and groin protection and chest plating and shoulder pads and a mouthpiece and a helmet, a professional football helmet that had an additional 3 inches of foam wrapped around the helmet, and how it was all held together with duct tape that had eye netting and a neck brace. It's fair to say that we looked fairly ridiculous. The men did. The women didn't wear any of the pads. They just taught the moves. It was the men who received all the blows. But we were safe within all that padding, and we were safe enough to get the good job done. Now, I first learned of this organization through a crisis that I experienced in my personal life. Years ago, one of my dearest friends endured a devastating assault. It was decades ago now. When I first found out about it, I felt very helpless. I didn't know what to do. I was crushed and furious. I wanted to do something. What she needed me to do was to listen, and that's what I did. One of the things that she shared with me was that in her process of recovery, one of the most important things that she did was to take a full impact, full contact self-defense course. It was a healing thing. It was an aspect of a larger forgiveness. I'll return to that. What she said inspired me to do a great deal of work, so I trained for it, and it was a very, very powerful experience. There was a group of about 10 of us who trained to do this work. We trained to do it in Redwood City, California. It's about 20 miles south of San Francisco. Now, I have to say to the people who may not know me very well, I realize that this is an awkward way for me to introduce myself to you. But I do so because it is honest and because it is simply true. When we are honest and true, so much in life becomes possible. It's a beautiful place in which we get to meet. A poet writes, "I think of my poems and songs as hands, and if I don't hold them out to you, I find that I won't be touched. If I keep them in my pocket, I would never get to see you seeing me, seeing you. And though I know from experience that many of you, for a myriad of reasons, will laugh and spit and walk away unmoved, still to meet those of you who do reach out, it's well worth the risk and the pain. So here are my hands. Do what you will." An artist named Rick Maston wrote these words. They are so beautiful. Some say that the most radical thing we can do is introduce ourselves to one another. If that's true, then I say it, I sing it, and I shout it from the rooftops of the world. Hi, my name is Leon. How do you do? It's good to know you. May we find in our togetherness honest joy. I saw an interesting article on the topic of forgiveness. And I love the topic of forgiveness because it feels like the best road that leads to honest joy. Now, the article wasn't new. I just found it recently. The article itself was about 9 months old. It was published in The Guardian and was entitled, "Father of Parkland Shooting Victim Apologizes for State of the Union Outburst." Jamie Gutenberg was 14 years old when she was killed in Parkland, Florida. You remember that terrible shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Jamie was the dancer that I described earlier, who was leaping into the air. She was one of the 17 people who lost their lives on the 14th of February in 2018. It was a terrible day, and 2 years later, on the 4th of February in 2020, Jamie's father, Fred Gutenberg, attended President Trump's State of the Union address as a special guest of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. When the topic of the Second Amendment was raised and defended, Fred Gutenberg spoke out against the supportive applause and affirmations of gun rights. He shouted out, "What about the victims of gun violence like my daughter?" And then he was promptly escorted from the gallery. Reflecting on his actions, he apologized. He regretted his outburst. He explained, "I let my emotions get the best of me. I simply wanted to be able to deal with the reality of gun violence and not have to listen to the lies about the Second Amendment. That said, I should not have yelled out. I am thankful for the overwhelming support that I am receiving. However, I do owe my family and friends an apology. I have tried to conduct myself with dignity throughout this process, and I will do better as I pursue gun safety." This prompted me to reflect on the nature of forgiveness. I asked myself, why does a man as noble and as dignified and as justified as Fred Gutenberg feel the need to apologize? I was clear. If forgiveness were an act of contrition, were an act of repentance in some way, I don't think that he should apologize. Just because he broke decorum, I don't think that that's meaningful. There are plenty of people who have broken decorum before. Nancy Pelosi herself has done it. President Trump has done it. And famously, a man named Joe Wilson did it when Barack Obama was presenting on the floor was presenting to Congress about health care in 2009. We're becoming too contentious, it seems to me. We can chill out a little with genuine forgiveness in our hearts. Fred Gutenberg asked for forgiveness, and that blows my mind a bit. It's not as if what he did was offensive or without precedent. As lacking in decorum as it might have been, from my point of view, Fred Gutenberg was far more respectful than President Trump had been, far more respectful than Nancy Pelosi had been, far more respectful than Joe Wilson had been back in 2009. Fred Gutenberg was passionately outspoken on behalf of his beloved daughter. What could be more justified than this? How could more possibly be asked of someone like Fred Gutenberg? Why in the world should he apologize? What is so special about this example of forgiveness, Fred's example, is not what the world is asking of him, but rather what Fred Gutenberg is asking of himself. He said that he let his emotions about his beloved daughter get the best of him. I reframe that in my mind, in my heart, in my soul somehow. I feel it differently. Within me, Fred Gutenberg's emotions about his daughter did not get the best of him. Within me, Fred Gutenberg's emotions about his daughter are the best of him. They are that aspect of his mind, of his heart, of his soul, spirit, self combined, that heaven knows best and that truly heaven is. The kind of forgiveness that best serves us is the kind that understands this meaning of heaven. In my best witness, heaven lies within, especially in times of deepest doubt, especially in our darkest hour. All of heaven is buried in our heart. Our job is to not cover it over. Forgiveness is often central in that effort. It's often the bedrock, the springboard, the bridge, and the good way forward. Many times, without the blessing of forgiveness, we can cut our own selves off. We cut off our access to the best parts of ourselves, and then our enemies win decisively, and we actually help them to do it. To my mind, my heart, my soul, this is why Jesus taught his students of life to love their enemies. This is the way I understand it, at any rate. And you don't have to follow Jesus to get hip about forgiveness. You can also follow Oscar Wilde, if you should choose. It was Wilde who said, "Always forgive your enemies." Nothing annoys them as much. I like the playful spirit of this idea, not because I think it's a good idea to annoy one's enemies rather than to love them, but rather because what I mean by forgiveness is not permission. Forgiveness is not the helpless act of accepting the unacceptable. And the refusal to forgive is not the breathless clinging to a wish for a world that does not exist. No, forgiveness is the agreement that we make in life to accept the world as it is at present. Forgiveness is the agreement that we make in life to accept the world as it is at present, nothing more. I don't think that it's meaningful for Fred Gutenberg to apologize for speaking out in boldest defense of his daughter. I'm fine with that. I wonder if Fred hasn't already done the deepest act of forgiveness that he really needs to do. I wonder if he hasn't already given up the best of his heart. Now, when I say that he should give up the best of his heart, I do not mean that he should surrender or that any of us should, as if in defeat. I mean that we should give upwards, give up. As in, we should offer the best of ourselves to heaven and to one another. I mean that if we want to understand forgiveness in the best way that we can, we have to look harder, better, and deeper before the idea of forgiveness really starts to flower and make more sense. When I say that I think that we should give up the best of our hearts, I mean that we should offer ourselves, surrender ourselves to that which is highest in us. I learned about this from 3 teachers. One was a 5-year-old boy. One was a beloved friend. And my 3rd teacher was a 14-year-old dancer named Jamie Gutenberg. To her, I wrote these words in a poem. Be wise and brave, your own soul to save. Your message engraved in gold, and I'll saddle up in the meantime and make my way closer to you. Because I just can't break like a bone anymore. And I just won't sink like a stone. I'm gonna pack up my sorrows, throw down my guns, and give up the best of my heart. The gentle heart of forgiveness opens when it's ready. We can be patient. Forgiveness happens in its own time. There's no need to force anything, to rush anything. Forgiveness flowers when it's ready. You can try to rush the petals, but they will not listen to you. Our job is to be open to forgiveness and to not foreclose upon it. Our job is to give up, to give upwards, skybound. Our job is to lay down and give up, and finally to surrender only to that which is highest in us, only to that which honors us in ways that magnify the best in us, the best of our hearts. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen.
Sing to me, my morning bird, the sweetest song I've ever heard. Love's melody in your heart's own words. Sing to me, my morning bird. When the sun comes over the mountain, just to hear you sing your song. When all the stars lay down in heaven to take their rest, Please don't fly away from me without leaving me with your song. For the morning can feel so lonely and so quiet when you're gone. So sing to me, my morning bird, the sweetest song I've ever heard. Love's melody in your heart's own words. Sing to me, my morning bird. Sing to me,